The universe was a place of infinite wonder and mystery, a vast, incomprehensible expanse where countless civilizations had risen and fallen, leaving behind nothing but the faintest echoes of their existence. At its heart were the elder beings, the alien gods, whose power and wisdom had shaped the fate of countless worlds. They were beings of immense and unfathomable power, each reigning over vast sectors of space. These gods existed in harmony, or so it seemed, their influence stretching across the galaxies like the tendrils of an ancient and unseen force. To these ancient beings, time was a fluid concept, and the rise and fall of empires was but the blink of an eye. Yet even in the depths of their omnipotence, rumor had begun to stir among them. Whispers carried on the cosmic winds, subtle at first but growing louder, spoke of a new power emerging from the farthest reaches of a distant spiral arm of the galaxy. This power, this new force, had emanated from a world so small and insignificant that it had been overlooked for eons. The beings who inhabited this world called themselves humans. The firstborn, one of the eldest and most revered of these gods, was the first to sense the anomaly. It was so ancient that its name had been forgotten. The firstborn's consciousness was spread across the stars, each thought of as a supernova, each breath a galactic wind. For millennia, it had watched over its domain with the detached serenity of an eternal being. But something had changed. A pulse of energy, unlike anything the firstborn had ever encountered, rippled through the fabric of space, originating from a small, blue planet called Earth. The firstborn, intrigued and wary, extended its awareness toward this world. What it found there shook it to its very core. The humans, a species barely more than infants on the cosmic scale, had somehow tapped into a force that should have been far beyond their reach, a force that rivaled the gods themselves. It was not merely their technology that concerned the firstborn, though it was indeed formidable. The true threat lay in the humans' unyielding spirit, their insatiable curiosity, and their relentless drive to conquer the unknown. These traits, combined with their newfound power, made them a force unlike any the universe had seen before. The firstborn recoiled, retreating to its cosmic throne to contemplate the implications of this discovery. Could it be that these mere mortals, these fleeting creatures of flesh and bone, posed a genuine threat to the gods? The thought was almost too absurd to consider, yet the evidence was undeniable. The humans had already begun to reshape their world, bending nature to their will, and now they were reaching out to the stars with ambitions that knew no bounds. For the first time in countless millennia, the firstborn felt a sensation that it had almost forgotten: fear. The humans had grown too powerful too quickly, and their potential for further growth seemed limitless. If left unchecked, they could very well disrupt the delicate balance of the universe, a balance that the gods had carefully maintained for eons. The firstborn was not alone in its concerns. As it withdrew its consciousness from Earth, it felt the presence of other gods, their awarenesses converging upon the same point in space. They too had felt the disturbance, the echo of human power reverberating through the cosmos. It was a call to action, a summons that none of them could ignore. The gods, who had once viewed humanity as little more than an interesting anomaly, now recognized the potential threat they posed. The firstborn knew that a reckoning was coming. The gods would have to decide what to do about the humans, whether to guide them, control them, or destroy them. But one thing was certain: the universe would never be the same again. The humans had awakened to their own power, and in doing so, they had caught the attention of beings far older and more powerful than they could ever imagine. The echoes of their actions had reached the void, and now the void was listening. The universe was not silent. It thrummed with energy, a symphony of stars and planets, of creation and destruction. The alien gods, each a maestro in their own right, conducted this cosmic orchestra with precision, their wills shaping the very fabric of reality. But now, a discordant note had entered the symphony, a note that threatened to unravel the delicate harmony they had maintained for eons. The source of this disturbance was unmistakable: the humans, a species that had, until recently, been of little consequence. The weaver of stars, An ancient being whose essence was intertwined with the light of a billion suns, was among the first to perceive the threat. The Weaver's tendrils of light, which stretched across galaxies, felt the disturbance as a tear in the very fabric of space-time. It was as if someone had plucked a single thread from a vast tapestry, and that thread had begun to unravel the entire weave. The Weaver had seen civilizations rise and fall, had witnessed the birth and death of stars, but never had it encountered a force so audacious, so willing to defy the natural order. The Void Shepherd, another of the elder gods, was the guardian of the spaces between galaxies, the dark, empty void where even light feared to tread. The shepherd sensed the humans' encroachment upon forbidden knowledge, knowledge that had been carefully guarded by the gods since the dawn of time. The humans were dabbling in forces that should have remained hidden, forces that could unbalance the entire universe if mishandled. The shepherd had seen the consequences of such hubris before, in civilizations long extinct, and it feared that history was about to repeat itself. The gods convened in the heart of a dying star, a place of immense power, where their discussions could remain hidden from the prying eyes of mortals. This star, once a beacon of life in its own system, now served as a neutral ground, a place where the gods could speak freely. They gathered in forms too vast and complex for mortal minds to comprehend, each representing a different aspect of the universe's creation. The firstborn was there, its presence commanding respect, though the fear it had felt since encountering the humans still lingered. The council was divided. The Weaver of Stars, ever the preserver of order, believed that the humans were a temporary anomaly, a spark that would soon burn itself out. It argued that intervention was unnecessary. The humans would destroy themselves in their hubris, as so many others had before them. But the Void Shepherd, more cautious and more attuned to the subtle shifts in the universe, disagreed. It warned that the humans were different, that their potential for growth was unprecedented. They were not merely curious, they were relentless, driven by a desire to understand, to conquer, and to reshape the world around them. The debate raged on, with each god offering their perspective. The firstborn, though initially hesitant, eventually sided with the Void Shepherd. It had seen firsthand the power the humans wielded, and it could not shake the feeling that they were destined for something greater, something that could either uplift or destroy the cosmos. It was the Weaver of Stars who proposed the most radical solution: to observe the humans more closely, to watch and learn from them, and to intervene only if absolutely necessary. This suggestion was met with mixed reactions. Some gods, those who had grown weary of their eternal existence, were intrigued by the idea. Others, more conservative and wary of change, feared the consequences of allowing humans to continue their ascent unchecked. In the end, the gods reached a consensus. They would watch, but they would not act, not yet. The humans would be given time to prove themselves, to either rise to the level of the gods or to fall, as so many had before them. But the gods would remain vigilant, ready to intervene if the humans' ambitions threatened to spiral out of control. As the council dispersed, each god returning to their domain, a sense of unease lingered in the air. The universe was changing, and the gods could feel it in every atom, in every wave of energy that pulsed through the cosmos. The humans had set something in motion, something that could not be easily stopped, and though the gods had decided to wait and watch, they knew that their time of passivity was running out. The awakening of the humans was upon them, and the universe would never be the same. On Earth, the humans were blissfully unaware of the gods' scrutiny. To them, the universe was a vast frontier, a place of endless possibilities waiting to be explored and conquered. They had always been driven by a unique blend of curiosity, ambition, and an insatiable hunger for knowledge. Over the centuries, these traits had propelled them from the depths of their planet's gravity well to the farthest reaches of their solar system. But now, they were reaching for something far greater: the stars themselves. Humanity's journey toward ascension had been marked by triumphs and tragedies alike. They had mastered the elements, bending nature to their will with advances in science and technology. Their achievements in artificial intelligence had led to machines that could think and learn, evolving at a pace that rivaled their creators. Quantum mechanics had unlocked the secrets of the universe at the most fundamental level, allowing humans to manipulate reality in ways that bordered on the miraculous. And their mastery of space travel had turned distant planets into mere stepping stones on their path to the stars. But it wasn't just their technology that set them apart. Humanity had something that the gods themselves found both fascinating and terrifying: an unyielding spirit. Where other species might have been content with their lot, the humans were never satisfied. They pushed the boundaries of what was possible, constantly striving for more. This drive, this relentless pursuit of the unknown, was what had brought them to the attention of the gods in the first place. As they expanded their reach into the cosmos, the humans encountered remnants of civilizations long gone, ancient relics, lost technologies, and forgotten knowledge. These artifacts, scattered across the galaxy, were relics of powers that had once ruled the stars. To the humans, they were keys to unlocking even greater potential. With each discovery, they grew bolder, delving deeper into the mysteries of the universe, eager to claim its secrets for themselves. But with each new achievement, humanity unknowingly drew closer to the gaze of the gods. The more they learned, the more they began to understand the true nature of the universe and the beings that dwelled within it. They began to sense the presence of something greater, something beyond their comprehension. Yet, instead of fear, they felt exhilaration. The humans believed that they were on the cusp of something extraordinary, that they were destined to rise above their mortal limitations and join the ranks of the cosmic powers. This belief was not entirely unfounded. The humans had already begun to transcend their physical forms, using genetic engineering and cybernetic enhancements to push the boundaries of what it meant to be human. They had altered their biology to survive in the harshest environments, designed machines that could outthink and outperform them, and even started to merge their consciousness with artificial intelligence. In their quest for perfection, they were becoming something new, something the gods had not anticipated. As humanity's power grew, so did their ambitions. They were no longer content with merely exploring the stars. They wanted to control them. They began to form alliances, build fleets of ships capable of traversing the galaxy, and develop weapons that could rival the gods themselves. They saw themselves as the heirs to the universe, destined to rule over it as the gods once had. But with power came arrogance, and with arrogance came hubris. The humans, in their quest for dominance, began to overstep their bounds. They tampered with forces they did not fully understand, forces that had been kept hidden by the gods for a reason. And in doing so, they unknowingly set the stage for a confrontation that would change the fate of the universe forever. The gods watched in silence, their unease growing with each passing moment. The humans were on the brink of something monumental, something that could either elevate them to godhood or destroy them utterly. The gods had seen this pattern before, in civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humanity had taken its first steps. But there was something different about the humans, something that made them more dangerous and more unpredictable than any other species that had come before them. The ascension of man was at hand, and the gods knew that they could not restrain themselves for much longer. The time for observation was drawing to a close. The time for action was approaching, and when it came, the universe would tremble in the wake of their decision. Meanwhile, humans had made a monumental discovery that was a triumph for humanity, a testament to their relentless pursuit of knowledge. A team made up of explorers, scientists, and engineers had stumbled upon an ancient artifact buried deep within a forgotten corner of the galaxy. It was a relic of unimaginable power, a device that could bend the very fabric of reality to the will of its user. The humans, ever curious and ambitious, had no idea that they had found a piece of the firstborn's legacy, a legacy that was never meant to be uncovered by mortal hands. The artifact was massive, a structure of black and gold gemstone, pulsating with a faint, eerie light. It was covered in inscriptions, symbols that no human language could decipher. Yet it radiated an vibrant energy, a force that seemed to hum with life. The team knew that they had discovered something extraordinary, something that could change the course of human history. But they were unaware of the danger they had awakened. When the humans activated the relic, it sent a shockwave through the universe, a pulse of energy so intense that it tore through space and time, reaching the farthest corners of the cosmos. The firstborn, who had been keeping a wary eye on Earth, felt the disturbance immediately. It recognized the energy signature. It was a fragment of its own power, a remnant of a time when the gods had shaped the universe to their will. The firstborn knew that it could no longer remain a mere observer. The humans had crossed a line, and now it was time to act. The firstborn manifested itself before the human explorers, appearing as a being of light and shadow, its form shifting and changing like the surface of a star. Its presence was overwhelming, a force of nature so immense that it seemed to warp reality around it. The humans, unprepared for such a confrontation, were struck with a primal fear. They fell to their knees, their minds struggling to comprehend the being before them. But the firstborn was shocked to find that the humans did not remain cowering for long. Though they were afraid, they were also defiant. They had come too far, achieved too much to be cowed by a being they saw as little more than an obstacle. One of the explorers, a woman named Dr. Helena Zavos, stepped forward. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her voice was steady as she spoke. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. "What gives you the right to stand in our way?" The firstborn, taken aback by her audacity, hesitated for the briefest of moments. It had encountered countless species over the eons, but never had it been confronted with such defiance from a mortal. The humans were different, it realized, different and dangerous. The firstborn extended itself, reaching for the relic. It would take it back, erase all memory of its existence from the humans' minds, and seal the knowledge away where it could never be found again. But as it attempted to seize the artifact, the humans fought back. They had realized that the relic would be valuable, possibly even dangerous, but they had not expected it to draw the attention of a god. Still, they were prepared. They had brought with them the best of their technology, shielding devices, energy weapons, and containment fields designed to counter any threat. To the firstborn's astonishment, the humans' technology was effective. They managed to create a barrier, a shield of energy that pushed the god back, forcing it to retreat. The relic, still pulsating with its otherworldly light, remained in human hands. The firstborn, wounded and enraged, withdrew, but not before leaving a warning. "You have no idea what you have unleashed," the firstborn's voice boomed through the minds of the explorers, reverberating through their very souls. "This power is not yours to wield. If you continue down this path, you will bring about your own destruction." With that, the firstborn vanished, its presence receding into the depths of the cosmos. The humans, shaken but undeterred, knew they had crossed a threshold. They had stood against a god and survived. But the encounter left them with more questions than answers. What was this relic, and why had the firstborn been so desperate to reclaim it? More importantly, what would happen now that they had defied a being of such immense power? The encounter left the firstborn deeply unsettled. Never before had a mortal race been able to challenge a god, let alone drive one away. The humans were more dangerous than the firstborn had ever imagined, and as it returned to the council of gods, the firstborn knew that the time for action had come. The humans could not be ignored. They had become a threat that the gods could not afford to overlook. The gods convened once more, their forms coalescing in the heart of a neutron star, a place of unimaginable gravity and density, where even light was bent and twisted by the sheer force of the star's pull. Here, in this crucible of power, they would decide the fate of humanity. The firstborn, still reeling from its confrontation with the humans, was the first to speak. Its voice was a thunderclap, a sound that reverberated through the very fabric of space-time. "The humans have defied us," the firstborn declared, its words laced with both anger and fear. "They have harnessed a power that was never meant for them, and they have used it to stand against me." The other gods listened in silence, their forms shifting and swirling in the intense gravity of the star. The weaver of stars, its light dimmed by the weight of the situation, was the next to speak. "This is unprecedented," the Weaver said, its voice a soft melodic hum. "No mortal race has ever challenged us in this way. We must consider the implications carefully." The Void Shepherd, ever cautious and protective, nodded in agreement. "Humans are more dangerous than we anticipated. If they can stand against one of us now, who knows what they will be capable of in the future. We cannot allow them to continue unchecked." The gods debated fiercely, their voices echoing through the void. Some argued for immediate intervention, for the destruction of the humans before they could become an even greater threat. Others, more curious and intrigued by humanity's potential, suggested a more measured approach, perhaps guidance or even an alliance. But the firstborn, still seething from its encounter, was adamant. "They must be stopped," it insisted. "They are a danger not only to us, but to the entire universe. Their inquisitiveness will be their undoing. We cannot wait for them to destroy themselves. We must act now." As the gods argued, a new presence made itself known. It was not a god in the traditional sense, but a being of immense power nonetheless, a force that had existed since the dawn of time, older even than the firstborn. This being, known only as the Keeper of Balance, was the guardian of universal equilibrium, the one who ensured that no force, no matter how powerful, would ever tip the scales too far. The Keeper's voice was a low, resonant hum, a sound that seemed to come from the very core of the neutron star itself. "You seek to destroy the humans because they have defied you," it said, its tone neutral and calm. "But have you considered that their defiance is what makes them unique? That their ability to challenge the status quo is what sets them apart?" The gods fell silent, contemplating the Keeper's words. The firstborn, however, was not swayed. "They are a threat," it repeated, "a threat that must be eliminated." The Keeper of Balance turned its attention to the firstborn, its gaze piercing and unyielding. "And what of the balance?" it asked. "If you destroy the humans, what will become of the equilibrium? They are a force of change, yes, but change is necessary for growth. Without it, the universe would stagnate and all things would wither and die." The Void Shepherd, ever protective of the status quo, interjected. "But what if they tip the balance too far? What if their actions bring about the end of everything we have worked to preserve?" The Keeper's form flickered, a ripple of energy passing through the star. "That is a possibility," it admitted, "but it is also possible that they could bring about a new era of prosperity, one that we cannot yet foresee. The future is not set in stone, and the humans have proven that they are capable of shaping it in ways we never imagined." The gods were torn, their ancient minds grappling with the enormity of the decision before them. The firstborn, however, was unwavering in its resolve. "I will not allow them to continue on this path," it declared. "If you will not join me, then I will act alone." The Keeper of Balance regarded the firstborn with a mixture of pity and resignation. "If you choose to act alone, you will bear the consequences alone as well," it warned. "Remember, the balance must be maintained, no matter the cost." With that, the Keeper withdrew, its presence fading into the background as the gods continued their deliberations. The firstborn, however, had made up its mind. It would not wait for the council to reach a decision. It would act, and it would act swiftly. The humans had defied it once, but they would not do so again. The time for debate was over. The time for action had come. The firstborn departed from the council, its form dissolving into a stream of energy that shot across the galaxy. It would gather its strength, marshal its forces, and bring the full weight of its power down upon the humans. And this time, it was determined not to be so easily repelled. As the firstborn prepared for its assault, the other gods watched in silence. Some were sympathetic to its cause, others were wary of the path it had chosen. But all of them knew that the universe was about to change in ways that none of them could fully predict. The humans had set something in motion, something that could not be stopped. And whatever the outcome, the cosmos would be altered for eternity. The warning from the firstborn had not been fully disregarded by human beings. The encounter had left them shaken but resolute. They knew now that they were no longer alone in the universe, far from it. The gods were real, and they were watching. But instead of cowing humanity into submission, this revelation only strengthened their resolve. They had come too far, achieved too much, to turn back now. If the gods wanted a fight, humanity would give them one. The leaders of Earth's most powerful nations and organizations convened in a secret meeting, deep beneath the surface of the planet, in a bunker designed to withstand even the most catastrophic of attacks. The room was filled with the brightest minds humanity had to offer: scientists, military strategists, diplomats, and engineers. The stakes had never been higher, and they all knew it. Dr. Helena Zavos, the scientist who had first confronted the firstborn, was among them. She stood at the head of the table, her face grim but determined. "We've confirmed that the firstborn is preparing to attack," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "It's gathering its power and could strike at any moment. We have to be ready." General Marcus Lee, a veteran of countless battles and the head of Earth's defense forces, leaned forward. "What's our plan, Doctor? How do we fight a god?" Helena met his gaze, her eyes hard. "We use everything we have. Every weapon, every piece of technology, every bit of knowledge we've gained. We've faced impossible odds before, and we've come out on top. This is just another challenge." The room was silent as the others absorbed her words. They all knew the truth. This was not just another challenge. This was a fight for survival, a battle that would determine the future of humankind. "We have one advantage," Helena continued. "The firstborn underestimates us. It thinks we're just mortals, insignificant compared to its power. But we've been underestimated before. It's what we do best, defying the odds." General Lee nodded. "Agreed. But we need more than just defiance. We need a strategy." Dr. Zavos turned to the holographic display at the center of the table. "We've been studying the relic, the one the firstborn was so desperate to reclaim. It's a weapon, but it's also more than that. It's a key to unlocking the full potential of our technology. If we can harness its power, we might be able to level the playing field." The display flickered, showing a 3D model of the relic. It was a complex structure, with layers of energy fields and mechanisms that defied conventional understanding. "We've only just begun to tap into its capabilities," Elena explained. "But we believe it can amplify our energy weapons, enhance our shielding, and even disrupt the firstborn's power. It's risky, but it's our best shot." The others exchanged glances, weighing the risks. Finally, General Lee spoke up. "If this is our best shot, then we must take it. We'll mobilize the fleet, deploy our forces, and prepare for a full-scale defense. And we'll use the relic to hit the firstborn where it hurts." The plan was set in motion. Across the planet, military forces from all regions went on high alert. Fleets of starships, armed with the most advanced weaponry Earth had ever produced, took to the skies. Defense grids were activated, creating a web of energy shields that encircled the planet. And deep within the Earth, teams of scientists and engineers worked around the clock to unlock the full power of the relic. As the hours ticked by, tension mounted. Humanity's last stand was about to begin, and everyone knew that the outcome would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the fate of the entire galaxy. The firstborn's power was immense, but the human race had something that no god could ever fully comprehend: the will to survive, the determination to fight, and an unbreakable spirit that had driven them to the stars in the first place. The first sign of the firstborn's approach was a massive energy surge detected by sensors across the solar system. It was coming, and it was coming fast. The sky above Earth darkened as the god's presence drew near, a shadow that blotted out the stars. In the command center, Helena and General Lee stood side by side, watching the displays as the firstborn's energy signature grew closer. "It's time," she said quietly. General Lee nodded. "All forces, prepare to engage. This is it, people. We hold the line no matter what." The battle began with a thunderous roar as the firstborn unleashed its power. Beams of energy, bright as the sun, lanced toward Earth, slamming into the planet's shields with enough force to shake the ground. But the world's defenses held, barely. The energy shields flared, absorbing the brunt of the attack. But the strain was immense. "Return fire," General Lee ordered, and the fleet responded. Ships unleashed volleys of plasma and energy beams, targeting the Firstborn with everything they had. The relic, now fully activated, amplified the attacks, sending waves of destructive force back at the god. For a moment it seemed like the plan was working. The Firstborn staggered, its form flickering as the human weapon struck, but then it recovered, retaliating with even greater force. The energy it unleashed was overwhelming, and the shields began to buckle. But the human spirit did not falter. The battle raged on, with neither side willing to give an inch. As the Firstborn's power clashed with the combined might of humanity, the fate of the universe hung in the balance. And as the conflict reached its peak, it became clear that this was more than just a fight for survival. It was a battle for the very soul of the cosmos. The battle had reached a fever pitch. The Firstborn, a god of immense power, was relentless in its assault. Its wrath was like nothing humanity had ever faced, a storm of energy that tore through space, threatening to annihilate everything in its path. Earth's defense forces, despite their advanced technology and the power of the relic, were struggling to hold the line. Ships exploded in fiery bursts, shields flickered and failed, and the ground itself shook under the force of the god's attacks. But Earth's inhabitants had not come this far to be defeated. They had faced extinction before, and each time they had risen stronger. This was no different. In the heart of the command center, Dr. Helena Zavos and General Marcus Lee were leading the fight, coordinating the efforts of thousands of soldiers, scientists, and engineers. They were determined to turn the tide, no matter the cost. "Helena, we can't keep this up much longer," General Lee warned, his voice grim. "The shields are failing, and our fleet is taking heavy losses. We need to find a way to break through the Firstborn's defenses." Helena's mind raced as she analyzed the data streaming across the holographic displays. The Firstborn's power was immense, but it wasn't invincible. There had to be a weakness, something they could exploit. Then she saw it, a pattern in the energy readings, a fluctuation in the Firstborn's power output every time it attacked. "There," Helena pointed to the display. "Look at those energy fluctuations. Every time it launches a major attack, its power momentarily dips. It's vulnerable for a split second. If we can time our counterattack just right, we might be able to break through." General Lee nodded, understanding instantly. "It's a long shot, but it's all we've got. Let's do it." They quickly relayed the plan to the fleet. The timing had to be perfect. If they missed the window, the Firstborn would overwhelm them. The ships repositioned, their weapons charged and ready. The ground-based defense systems focused all their remaining power on the relic, channeling its energy into a single, devastating strike. The Firstborn, sensing the renewed determination of its foes, unleashed another massive attack. Beams of energy lanced toward Earth, but this time the humans were ready. They braced for impact, knowing that this was their chance. The shields flared, absorbing the brunt of the assault, but then came the momentary dip in the Firstborn's power, a tiny window of opportunity. "Now!" General Lee shouted. The fleet responded with a coordinated volley of plasma and energy beams, all aimed directly at the Firstborn's core. At the same moment, the relic activated, releasing a pulse of energy that amplified the attack, focusing it into a single, concentrated burst. The combined force of the strike hit the Firstborn with unimaginable power, piercing through its defenses and striking at its very essence. For the first time since the battle began, the Firstborn recoiled. Its form flickered, destabilized by the sheer force of the attack. It let out a roar of anger and pain, a sound that echoed across the galaxy. The gods, who had been watching from afar, felt the shockwave of the Firstborn's distress and realized that the humans had found a way to hurt one of their own. The Firstborn, weakened but not defeated, lashed out in fury. It unleashed a final, desperate attack, a wave of energy so powerful that it threatened to destroy everything in its path. But the humans, fueled by the hope of victory, stood their ground. The shields absorbed the impact, the relic countered the energy, and the fleet pressed on with the attack. In that moment, the tide of the battle turned. The Firstborn, already weakened by the humans' relentless assault, began to falter. The relic, now fully in sync with humanity's technology, amplified their power to a level that even the gods had not anticipated. The humans, once mere mortals, were now wielding the power of the cosmos itself. As the firstborn's energy began to dissipate, its form started to collapse. The god, once a being of seemingly indestructible strength, was now being undone by the very force it had sought to control. The humans watched in awe and fear as the firstborn's light dimmed, its presence fading from the universe. But the battle was not yet over. Even as the firstborn began to falter, it gathered the last of its strength for one final act. It reached out with its will, not to attack, but to communicate. Its voice, weakened but still filled with ancient power, echoed in the minds of all who were present. "You have done the impossible," the firstborn said. "You have defeated a god. But know this, humans, you are not the masters of the universe. The power you wield is not yours by right. You have only begun to understand what you have unleashed. Beware the consequences." With those final words, the firstborn's form collapsed entirely, its energy dispersing into the void. The battle was won, but the warning lingered in the minds of the victors. Humanity had defied the gods and emerged victorious. But at what cost? The relic, now fully active, pulsed with a power that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. They had harnessed the energy of the cosmos, but they still didn't fully understand it. As the remnants of the fleet regrouped and Earth's defenses stabilized, Helena and General Lee exchanged a glance. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. They had defeated one god, but the universe was vast, and there were more out there, gods who would not take kindly to humanity's ascension. For now, they would celebrate their victory, but they knew that this was only the beginning. The true challenge was still ahead, and humanity would need every ounce of its strength and ingenuity to face what was to come. The universe was quiet in the aftermath of the battle. The firstborn's defeat sent ripples through the cosmos, a disturbance felt by beings far and wide. The other gods, who had watched the conflict with a mixture of curiosity and concern, now faced a stark reality. Humanity was no longer a minor player in the grand scheme of the universe. They had risen to a level of power that even the gods could not ignore. On Earth, the news of the victory spread quickly. Celebrations erupted across the planet. A collective sigh of relief as billions of people realized they had survived the unthinkable. The threat of the firstborn had been vanquished, and humanity had proven that they could stand against even the mightiest of foes. But beneath the celebrations, there was an undercurrent of unease. The firstborn's final warning had not been forgotten. The relic, now fully integrated into human technology, was a source of both wonder and fear. It had given them the power to defeat a god, but it also represented an unknown force, one that could either lead them to greatness or to their own destruction. In the heart of the command center, Dr. Vasquez and General Lee stood side by side, gazing at the relic. It floated in a containment field, its surface glowing with an otherworldly light. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to study it, to understand its full capabilities, but there was still so much they didn't know. "It's beautiful," Elena said softly, her voice tinged with awe. "But it's also dangerous. We've unlocked something incredible, but we have to be careful." The firstborn's warning wasn't just a threat, it was a prophecy. If we're not careful, this power could destroy us. General Lee nodded, his expression serious. "We've come this far because we've always pushed the boundaries, always strived for more. But you're right, we need to be cautious. We've proven that we can stand against gods, but now we have to prove that we can handle the responsibility that comes with that power." As they spoke, the doors to the command center opened, and a group of world leaders entered. They had come to discuss the future, to plan the next steps for mankind. The victory had united them in a way that nothing else could, but now they faced the daunting task of deciding how to move forward. "We need to decide what to do with the relic," one of the leaders said. "It's the key to our future, but it's also a potential threat. We need to use it wisely, or it could be our undoing." Helena and General Lee exchanged a glance once more. They had both been at the forefront of the battle and had seen firsthand the power the relic could wield. They knew that the decisions made in this room would shape the future of humanity for generations to come. "We need to approach this with caution," she said, addressing the room. "The relic is more than just a weapon. It's a tool, a source of knowledge. If we use it responsibly, it could lead us to new heights, to discoveries that we can't even fathom. But if we're reckless, it could also bring about our downfall." The room was silent as the leaders considered her words. Finally, one of them spoke up. "Then we must ensure that it's used wisely. We need to establish protocols, to create safeguards that will prevent anyone from abusing this power. We must be united in our purpose, or we risk everything we fought for." The discussion continued late into the night, with every decision weighed carefully. The relic, once seen as a weapon, was now regarded as a symbol of humanity's potential and of the responsibilities that came with it. It would not be used for conquest or domination, but for exploration, for discovery, and for the betterment of all. As the meeting came to an end, the leaders reached a consensus. The relic would be housed in a secure facility, overseen by an international council composed of scientists, military leaders, and representatives from every nation. Its use would be strictly regulated, and its power would only be tapped for purposes that aligned with the highest ideals for the world's people: exploration, defense, and the pursuit of knowledge. But even as they made these decisions, there was an unspoken understanding among them all. The universe had changed, and humanity would need to change with it. They were no longer just citizens of Earth. They were now part of a much larger cosmic community. The gods, once distant and unknowable, had been confronted and defeated, but their presence would loom large over humanity's future. Helena and Marcus left the command center together, walking out into the crisp night air. The stars above shone brightly, undisturbed by the turmoil that had played out in their midst. For a moment they stood in silence, contemplating the vastness of the space and the new place that humans had carved out within it. "It's strange, isn't it?" she said, her voice thoughtful. "We've always looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Now we know we're not, but it's not what we expected. The universe is more dangerous, more complicated than we ever imagined." He nodded. "But it's also full of possibilities. We've faced the unknown and survived. We've proven that we're capable of more than anyone, including ourselves, ever thought possible. The gods may be watching, but they'll find that we're not so easily intimidated." She smiled, a flicker of hope lighting up her eyes. "You're right. We've taken our first steps into a much larger world, and there's no turning back now. We'll face whatever comes next, just like we always have, together and with our eyes open." As they walked further away from the command center, the dawn began to break on the horizon, casting a golden light over the landscape. It was a new day, a new beginning for the people of Earth. They had fought the gods and won, but now the real challenge lay ahead: to build a future worthy of the power they had unleashed, and to chart a course through the stars that would ensure their survival and their legacy would endure for millennia to come. Across the world, people looked to the skies, knowing that they were no longer alone. The relic, a beacon of both hope and caution, had changed everything. Humankind had reached for the stars and found more than they had ever dreamed. Now they would walk among them, not as conquerors or slaves, but as equals, ready to face whatever the universe had in store. As the first rays of sunlight illuminated the earth, humanity stood on the brink of a new era. The gods had been startled by human power, but the future belonged to those who dared to dream. And in the vast expanse of the cosmos, there was still so much left to discover. The stars awaited, and humanity, undaunted, would rise to meet them. This new dawn was just the beginning.